The morning sun shone brightly as Jasmine Walker hurried down the busy street. She checked her watch and quickened her pace. Today was important. She had a meeting with a potential client who could change everything for her small marketing firm. Her presentation was ready, her outfit was perfect, and she had practiced her pitch until the words flowed naturally. Everything was going according to plan until she felt a familiar twinge in her bladder. Jasmine looked around. She was still 20 minutes away from the office building where her meeting would take place, and the pressure was becoming uncomfortable. Up ahead, she spotted a small convenience store with a faded blue awning. The sign above the door read, "Quick Stop." Perfect, she thought. She could grab a bottle of water and use the restroom before continuing on her way. The bell above the door jingled as Jasmine stepped inside. The store was small but neat, with rows of snacks and everyday essentials lining the shelves. A middle-aged man with thinning hair and a bored expression stood behind the counter, scrolling through his phone. His name tag read, Todd. "Good morning," Jasmine said with a smile as she approached the refrigerated section at the back of the store. She selected a bottle of water and made her way to the counter. Todd barely looked up as he scanned the water. "That'll be $2.50, he said flatly. Jasmine handed him $3. "Keep the change," she said. "And could you please tell me where the restroom is? I'm in a bit of a hurry." For the first time, Todd looked at her, really looked at her. His eyes moved from her face to her professional attire, then back to her face. Something in his expression changed, hardened. "Restrooms are out of order," he said, turning away to organize some cigarette packs behind the counter. Jasmine frowned. "Oh, that's too bad. When do you think they'll be fixed? I have an important meeting and it's still quite a walk from here." "Don't know. Could be days. Plumbing issues." Todd's responses were clipped, his attention seemingly focused on anything but her. Jasmine was about to accept his answer when the door to the back of the store opened. A young white woman with blonde hair emerged, dropping her phone into her purse as she walked toward the exit. She nodded at Todd with a smile, which he returned warmly. "Thanks for letting me use the bathroom," the woman said. "Have a good one." "You too, Becca. See you tomorrow," Todd replied, his tone suddenly friendly and welcoming. The bell jingled again as the woman left and the store fell silent. Jasmine stood frozen at the counter, the bottle of water clutched tightly in her hand. She felt a flush of heat rise to her cheeks as she processed what had just happened. "Excuse me," she said, keeping her voice steady despite the anger building inside her. "That woman just used the restroom." Todd's expression hardened again. "That's different. She's a regular." "Your sign says, 'Restrooms for customers only,'" Jasmine pointed out, gesturing to the small sign posted near the back of the store. "I just purchased something. I'm a customer too." Todd crossed his arms over his chest. "Look, like I said, the bathroom just broke down. She was the last one to use it before it stopped working." Jasmine took a deep breath. She had faced situations like this before, subtle discrimination that was hard to call out directly. She knew what was happening, but proving it was another matter entirely. Still, she had to try. "That doesn't make any sense," she said. "If it just broke down, shouldn't you put up a sign or something? And why would you thank her for using it if it's now broken?" Todd's face reddened slightly. "Listen, lady, I don't have to explain myself to you. The bathroom is not available. Try somewhere else." A few other customers had entered the store and were now watching the exchange. An older man with a newspaper tucked under his arm looked uncomfortable, while a teenage girl pretended to be engrossed in the chip selection, though her eyes kept darting toward the counter. "I'd like to speak with your manager." "Please," Jasmine said, keeping her composure. She had learned long ago that showing anger in these situations only played into stereotypes that would be used against her. Todd scoffed. "Manager's not here. I'm in charge until afternoon. When will the manager be in?" Jasmine pressed. "Not sure. Maybe later, maybe not at all today." Todd's dismissive tone made it clear he wanted the conversation to end. Another customer approached the counter with a coffee and a breakfast sandwich. Todd immediately brightened, greeting the man with a cheerfulness that had been entirely absent during his interaction with Jasmine. "Morning, Joe. The usual today?" "You know it, Todd," the man replied, handing over some cash. After paying, he headed toward the back of the store. "Bathroom's down that hall to the left," Todd called after him. "We just fixed the sink in there, so the water might take a second to warm up." Jasmine's mouth fell open. The audacity was stunning. Not only had Todd lied to her face, but he was now openly directing another customer to the supposedly broken facilities. The realization hit Jasmine like a physical blow. This wasn't about bathrooms or store policies. This was about her, about the color of her skin. The familiar feeling of being treated as other washed over her, bringing with it a mixture of frustration, hurt, and anger that she had experienced many times before. She glanced at her watch. Her meeting was in 40 minutes. She needed to use a restroom and still make it across town in time. Making a scene wouldn't solve anything, and it certainly wouldn't help her professional reputation if she arrived at her meeting flustered and upset. But walking away felt like letting Todd win, like accepting that his treatment of her was somehow okay. The store had become uncomfortably quiet. The few customers present were trying not to stare, but Jasmine could feel their eyes on her. She was suddenly hyper-aware of being the only black person in the store. "Is there a problem here?" A voice came from behind her. Jasmine turned to see an elderly white woman with kind eyes and silver hair pulled into a neat bun. "No problem, Mrs. Johnson," Todd said quickly, "just explaining to this lady that she can't use the facilities." Mrs. Johnson looked between Todd and Jasmine, her brow furrowed. "Is that right? And why not?" Before Todd could answer, Jasmine spoke up. "He told me the restrooms were out of order, but I've seen him allow 2 other customers to use them since I've been standing here." Mrs. Johnson's expression shifted from confusion to understanding, and then to something that looked like disappointment mixed with anger. "I see." She turned to Todd. "Young man, my late husband and I have been coming to this store for 30 years and I've never heard such nonsense." "Shame on you." Todd's face reddened further, but he maintained his stance. "Mrs. Johnson, I'm just following the rules." "The owner—" "Don't you dare bring Ray into this," Mrs. Johnson interrupted. "Ray Martinez would never stand for this kind of behavior in his store, and you know it." Jasmine felt a small surge of hope at the mention of the owner. If Mrs. Johnson was right, perhaps there was someone who would take this situation seriously. "Does Ray still come in regularly?" Jasmine asked Mrs. Johnson. "Every morning to check the deliveries," the older woman confirmed. "He should be here any minute now." She checked her watch. "He's usually here by 8:30. Jasmine checked her own watch again. It was 8:25. Her meeting was at 9:15. She had a decision to make: continue on her way and try to find another restroom, or wait 5 minutes to speak with the owner. The man who had gone to use the restroom emerged and left the store without a second glance. Jasmine noticed Todd visibly relax once the door closed behind him. "I think I'll wait for Ray," Jasmine decided, stepping away from the counter to allow other customers to check out. She moved toward the window, looking out at the parking lot while taking slow sips of her water. Mrs. Johnson joined her after making her purchase. "I'm sorry this happened to you, dear," she said quietly. "Ray is a good man. He'll make this right." Jasmine nodded, grateful for the woman's kindness but still stinging from Todd's treatment. "Thank you. I appreciate you speaking up. My grandson is about your age," Mrs. Johnson continued. "He's told me stories. Well, let's just say I believe you. And this isn't right." As they stood by the window, Jasmine saw another customer, a young man in a business suit, ask for and receive directions to the restroom. Her resolve strengthened. She wasn't just standing up for herself now. She was standing up for every person who had ever been dismissed, denied, or discriminated against based on nothing more than the color of their skin. Outside, a few more people entered the store, the morning rush picking up. Jasmine decided to step outside to make a quick call to her client, explaining that she might be a few minutes late due to an unexpected delay. To her relief, the client was understanding and agreed to push the meeting back by half an hour. As she ended the call, Jasmine looked up to see a truck pulling into the parking lot. The logo on the side matched the sign above the store. Her heart beat a little faster as she watched a middle-aged Hispanic man step out, carrying a clipboard. This had to be Ray. The morning sun continued to climb higher in the sky, casting shorter shadows across the parking lot. Jasmine straightened her shoulders and prepared to approach the man, who might just change everything about how this day would unfold. Jasmine took a deep breath and walked toward the man with the clipboard. The morning air was cool against her skin, a stark contrast to the heat of anger and embarrassment she still felt from the encounter inside. "Excuse me," she called out as she approached. "Are you Ray, the owner of this store?" The man looked up from his clipboard, his expression curious but not unwelcoming. "Yes, I'm Ray Martinez," he confirmed, extending his hand. "Can I help you with something?" Jasmine introduced herself and shook his hand firmly. "I was just in your store, and I had a rather unpleasant experience that I thought you should know about." Ray's friendly expression shifted to concern. "I'm sorry to hear that. What happened?" Jasmine hesitated for a moment. She had been in situations like this before where speaking up led nowhere or worse, made her look like she was overreacting. But Mrs. Johnson's words echoed in her mind, and she decided to trust that Ray would listen. "I stopped in to buy water and asked to use the restroom," Jasmine explained, keeping her voice even. "Your cashier Todd told me the restrooms were out of order, but then I saw him let other customers use them right after telling me they were broken." Ray's brow furrowed. "Are you sure about this? That doesn't sound right." "I'm positive," Jasmine said firmly. "In fact, there's a woman inside named Mrs. Johnson who witnessed part of it. She seemed to know you well." At the mention of Mrs. Johnson, Ray's expression changed. "Elaine Johnson? She and her husband were my first customers when I bought this place 20 years ago." He glanced at his watch, then back at Jasmine. "Would you mind waiting here for just a minute? I'd like to check on this myself." Jasmine nodded, and Ray headed into the store. Through the window, she could see him greeting Mrs. Johnson with a warm hug, before his expression turned serious as they spoke. Mrs. Johnson pointed toward Todd at the counter, who was now helping another customer. Ray's posture stiffened visibly as the conversation continued. After a few minutes, Ray emerged from the store and approached Jasmine again. His face was grim, his earlier friendliness replaced by a look of deep disappointment mixed with anger. "Ms. Walker, I owe you an apology," he said, his voice heavy with sincerity. "I spoke with Elaine and observed Todd's behavior myself. What happened to you was completely unacceptable." Jasmine felt a wave of relief wash over her. Being believed, truly heard, was more powerful than she had expected. "I've only owned this store for 2 weeks," Todd continued nervously, his eyes darting between Ray and Jasmine. "The previous manager told me that we should be careful about who we let use the facilities because of problems in the past." "Problems?" Ray repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. "What kind of problems, Todd?" Todd shifted uncomfortably. "You know, people making a mess, doing drugs in there, that sort of thing. And you decided, based on what exactly, that Ms. Walker here was likely to cause these problems?" Ray's question hung in the air, the implication clear to everyone in the room. Todd's face reddened further. I wasn't." "You were," Mrs. Johnson interjected firmly. "I saw the whole thing. You let Joe and that young man in the suit use the restroom without question, but told this young lady it was broken. That's discrimination, plain and simple." The young cashier looked down at the floor, unable to meet anyone's eyes. The store had gone quiet again, customers pretending to browse while listening intently to the confrontation. "Todd, I need you to go to the back office and wait for me there," Ray said, his voice leaving no room for argument. "We're going to have a serious conversation about your future with this store." As Todd slunk away, Ray turned back to Jasmine. "Ms. Walker, I can't apologize enough for how you were treated." "This is not what my business stands for." "Not at all." Jasmine nodded, taking in his words. "I appreciate that, Mr. Martinez, but I have to ask, what happens now? Will there be any real consequences, or is this just going to be swept under the rug once I leave?" It was a bold question, but one born from experience. Too often, apologies came without action, promises without follow-through. Ray seemed to understand the weight behind her question. "That's a fair concern. If you'll allow me a moment to make this right, I'd like to show you that I take this very seriously." He turned toward the other customers in the store. "Folks, I need to apologize for the disruption. As the owner of Quick Stop, I want to make something very clear. This store serves everyone with respect and dignity, regardless of race, gender, or anything else. What happened here today was wrong, and I take full responsibility for it." A few customers nodded approvingly, while others looked uncomfortable at the public acknowledgement of what had transpired. Ray continued, "Starting today, I'm implementing a new policy. All customers who make a purchase are welcome to use our facilities, no exceptions. And any employee who can't treat every customer with respect doesn't work here anymore. That's non-negotiable." He turned back to Jasmine. "Now, if you'd like to use the restroom, it's available to you. And of course, your purchase today is on the house." "Thank you." Jasmine said, genuinely moved by his response. I do still need to use the restroom, and I appreciate your addressing this so directly. As Ray showed her to the back of the store, Mrs. Johnson approached them. I'm proud of you, Ray, she said, patting his arm. Your father would be too, Ray smiled sadly. Pop built this place on treating people right. I'm just trying to live up to that. While Jasmine used the restroom, which was perfectly functional and clean, Ray and Mrs. Johnson waited outside. She could hear them talking in low voices about the community, about changes over the years, about the importance of standing up against discrimination, even when it was subtle or easy to ignore. When she emerged, feeling both physically relieved and emotionally vindicated, Ray was waiting with a business card in his hand. This has my personal cell number on it, he explained, handing it to her. If you ever experience anything like this in my store again, which you won't because I'm going to make sure of it, I want you to call me directly. Jasmine took the card, tucking it into her wallet. I appreciate that, Mr. Martinez, really. Please call me Ray, he insisted, and I hope you'll come back. I'd like the chance to show you that this isn't what we're about. As they walked back to the front of the store, Jasmine checked her watch. She still had time to make her meeting, thanks to the client's flexibility. The morning's events had been stressful, but there was a certain satisfaction in knowing that her decision to stand up for herself might make a difference for others in the future. At the front of the store, Ray addressed the remaining customers and the new cashier who had taken Todd's place, a young woman who had apparently been called in from the back office. Lisa will be taking care of you all from now on, Ray announced, and I'll be staying here today to make sure everything runs smoothly. If anyone has any concerns or feedback about your experience in this store, I'm all ears. Jasmine prepared to leave, her water bottle in hand. As she reached the door, Ray called after her. Ms. Walker, one more thing. Would it be all right if I contacted you in a week or so? I'd like to let you know what changes we've made to prevent this from happening again. Jasmine considered the request. It would be easy to walk away and never come back to this store, to file this experience away with the many others she'd had over the years. But Ray's sincerity seemed genuine, and his quick action suggested he was serious about making changes. Yes, that would be fine, she replied, taking out one of her own business cards and handing it to him. Here's my contact information. Ray looked at the card. Walker Marketing Solutions, he read. You know, we've been thinking about updating our advertising strategy. Maybe we could talk about that too, if you're interested. Jasmine smiled, her first genuine smile since entering the store. I'd be happy to discuss it. Professional courtesy rates, of course. Ray laughed, the tension in the air finally breaking. Of course. Good luck with your meeting today. As Jasmine left the store and continued on her way, she felt lighter somehow. The incident had been painful, but the resolution gave her hope. One person standing up, one business owner taking responsibility, one community member speaking out. These small actions created ripples that could lead to real change. Her phone buzzed with a text from her client, confirming their meeting time. Jasmine quickened her pace, her mind already shifting to the presentation she was about to give. She was a professional after all, and she had work to do. But as she walked, she made a mental note to follow up with Ray in a few days. This story wasn't over yet. The city bustled around her, people rushing to work, lost in their own thoughts and concerns. Most would never know what had transpired in that small convenience store that morning. But for Jasmine, for Ray, for Mrs. Johnson, and even for Todd, something had changed. A small moment of injustice had been confronted, acknowledged and addressed, and sometimes that's how progress begins. Not with grand gestures or sweeping reforms, but with one person refusing to accept unfair treatment and another person having the courage to make it right. As Jasmine rounded the corner to her client's building, she took a deep breath and straightened her shoulders. The morning had thrown her an unexpected challenge, but she had faced it head-on and emerged stronger. Now it was time to focus on the next challenge, wowing her potential client with the marketing strategy she had worked so hard to develop. She pushed open the glass doors of the office building, greeted the receptionist with a smile, and stepped into the elevator. As the doors closed and the elevator began to rise, Jasmine felt a quiet confidence settle over her. Whatever came next, she was ready. The elevator chimed, announcing her arrival at the client's floor. Jasmine stepped out, her presentation folder tucked under her arm. the morning's events still fresh in her mind but no longer at the forefront of her thoughts. She had a job to do, and she was going to do it well. But as she approached the conference room where her meeting would take place, Jasmine couldn't help but wonder about what was happening back at the quick stop. What was Ray saying to Todd right now? Would real changes be made? Would the next person who looked like her receive different treatment? She paused outside the conference room door, taking a moment to collect her thoughts. The answers to those questions would come in time. For now, she had done what she could. She had spoken up, stood her ground, and helped set a change in motion. A woman opened the conference room door from inside. "Ms. Walker, we're ready for you." Jasmine smiled and stepped forward. "Thank you. I'm ready too," and she was ready for this meeting, ready for whatever came next, and ready to continue being a catalyst for the changes, both big and small, that the world still needed. Back at the quick stop, Ray Martinez closed the door to his small office and took a seat behind the desk. Across from him, Todd sat with his arms crossed, a mixture of defiance and nervousness on his face. "I've been running this store for 20 years, Ray began, his voice calm but firm. "My father ran it for 30 years before that. Do you know what he taught me about business, Todd?" Todd shifted uncomfortably. "No, sir." "He said that a business is only as good as the way it treats people, all people." Ray leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk. "What happened out there today goes against everything this store stands for." Todd uncrossed his arms, his posture softening slightly. "Mr. Martinez, I was just trying to protect the store. The last manager told me—" "I don't care what Greg told you," Ray interrupted. "Greg doesn't work here anymore for a reason. His policies were driving customers away and creating a toxic environment. That's not how we do things." The small office fell silent as Todd absorbed Ray's words. Outside, they could hear the regular sounds of the store, the beep of the scanner, the jingle of the door, the murmur of customer conversations. "I didn't mean to—" Todd's voice trailed off. "Didn't mean to what?" Ray pressed. "Discriminate against a customer based on her race? Because that's exactly what you did, whether you want to admit it or not." Todd's face flushed. "That's not fair. I was just being cautious." "Cautious about what?" Ms. Walker was well-dressed, polite, and had made a purchase. "What exactly made her different from the other customers you let use the restroom?" Ray's question hung in the air, unanswered but understood by both men. After a moment, Ray continued. "Look, Todd, I'm not here to shame you. I'm trying to make you understand the impact of your actions. That woman was just trying to use a bathroom, a basic human need, and you made her feel unwelcome and less than because of who she is. Can you imagine how that feels?" Todd looked down at his hands. "I guess I didn't think about it that way." "That's the problem," Ray said, his voice softening slightly. "Too many people don't think about it. They make quick judgments, follow biased instincts, and never consider the hurt they cause." Outside the office, Lisa, the new cashier, was efficiently handling the morning rush. She had worked at Quick Stop for 3 years, mainly in the evening shifts while she attended community college during the day. Ray had called her in when it became clear that Todd needed to be removed from the front counter immediately. Meanwhile, Jasmine had arrived at her client meeting and was now setting up her presentation. Despite the morning's turmoil, she was composed and focused. Years of navigating similar situations had taught her to compartmentalize, to not let the weight of discrimination affect her professional performance. It wasn't fair that she had to develop this skill, but it was a reality she had learned to manage. "Before we begin," she said to the small group gathered in the conference room, "I want to thank you for your flexibility this morning. I encountered an unexpected situation that needed to be addressed." The client, a middle-aged woman named Patricia, smiled warmly. "No problem at all. We're just glad you made it. Ready when you are." Jasmine took a deep breath and launched into her presentation, pushing thoughts of the convenience store to the back of her mind. For the next hour, she was focused solely on marketing strategies, target demographics, and growth projections. Back at the Quick Stop, Ray had moved from his office to the store floor, where he was now speaking with Mrs. Johnson. The elderly woman had decided to stay a while longer, partly out of concern for Ray and partly because she felt a responsibility to see this situation through. "You did the right thing, Ray," she said, watching as Lisa efficiently helped customers at the register. "Your father would be proud." Ray smiled sadly. "I just wish I'd known what was going on sooner." "How long has this been happening?" Mrs. Johnson sighed. I can't say for sure. I don't come in every day like I used to. But things changed after Greg took over as manager last year. The store didn't feel as welcoming anymore. Ray nodded, understanding. Greg had been hired by the regional supervisor during a period when Ray had stepped back from day-to-day operations to care for his ailing mother. By the time Ray returned to regular oversight, the damage had been done. Subtle policies implemented, certain customers made to feel unwelcome, staff trained to view some people with suspicion. Well, that stops now, Ray declared. I'm going to be here every day for a while, making sure we get back to treating people right. As they spoke, Todd emerged from the back office, his expression subdued. He approached Ray, keeping his voice low. Mr. Martinez, I've been thinking about what you said. I want to apologize. To you and to that customer. Ray studied the young man's face, looking for sincerity. That's a start, Todd. But an apology is meaningless without changed behavior. I understand, Todd replied. I'd like a chance to make things right if you'll let me. Ray considered the request. He believed in second chances. His father had given many people opportunities to learn and grow over the years. But he also believed in consequences. Here's what we're going to do, Ray decided. You're suspended for the rest of the week without pay. When you come back, you'll be working under Lisa's supervision, and you're going to take a training course on unconscious bias that the regional office offers. Todd nodded, accepting the terms without argument. One more thing, Ray added. If Ms. Walker comes back to the store while you're working, I expect you to apologize to her directly and show her nothing but respect. Understood? Yes, sir, Todd agreed. I'll do better. As Todd left the store, Ray turned back to Mrs. Johnson. Do you think I'm making a mistake giving him another chance? The elderly woman considered the question carefully. People can change, Ray. Not all of them do, but they can. Your father believed that, and so do I. Ray nodded, grateful for her wisdom. I hope you're right. Across town, Jasmine was concluding her presentation to enthusiastic responses. The potential client was impressed with her strategies and eager to work with her firm. This is exactly the fresh perspective we've been looking for, Patricia said as they shook hands. I'll have the contract drawn up by the end of the week. Jasmine smiled, her professional success a stark contrast to the morning's humiliation. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm excited to get started. As she packed up her materials, Patricia approached her again. You mentioned you had an unexpected situation this morning. Is everything all right? Jasmine hesitated. In professional settings, she rarely discussed her experiences with discrimination. It was a personal policy, one born from the fear of being seen as playing the race card or being labeled as difficult. But something about Patricia's genuine concern made her reconsider. Actually, I had an unpleasant experience at a convenience store, Jasmine admitted. The cashier refused to let me use the restroom even though I'd made a purchase but allowed other customers to use it right after denying me. Patricia's expression darkened with understanding. I'm sorry that happened to you. Unfortunately, it's not surprising. The surprising part was what happened next, Jasmine continued. The owner arrived and he actually addressed it immediately. He apologized, confronted the cashier, and promised changes. Patricia raised her eyebrows. That is surprising. In a good way. Yes, Jasmine agreed. It was validating to be heard, to have someone in power acknowledge the problem and take action. The two women shared a moment of understanding, the kind that comes from shared experiences despite different backgrounds. Well, I'm glad at least the owner did the right thing, Patricia said finally, and I'm even more glad you made it to our meeting. Your firm is exactly what we need. As Jasmine left the building with a confirmed client and the promise of a contract, her phone buzzed with a text message. It was from a number she didn't recognize. Ms. Walker, this is Ray Martinez from Quick Stop. I wanted to check that you made it to your meeting on time and let you know that I've addressed the situation with Todd. He's been suspended and will be required to complete training before returning. I'm also implementing new store policies effective immediately. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. Your courage will help ensure others don't face similar treatment. Jasmine stopped walking, surprised by the follow-up. In her experience, promises of change were rarely followed by actual action, and certainly not with such immediate communication. She typed a reply. Thank you for the update, Mr. Martinez. I did make my meeting and it went well. I appreciate your taking this seriously. His response came quickly. Please call me Ray, and of course I take it seriously. My family has been serving this community for 50 years. We can only do that successfully if everyone feels welcome. Jasmine smiled slightly as she continued walking to her car. The morning had been a roller coaster of emotions, frustration, anger, validation, and now a cautious optimism. One positive interaction couldn't erase a lifetime of similar experiences, but it was a reminder that change was possible, even if it came in small increments. As she drove back to her office, Jasmine thought about what she would tell her friends when they asked about her day. Would she lead with the discrimination she faced or the responsive action that followed? Would she focus on the initial hurt or the eventual resolution? Both were true. Both were part of her story. And perhaps the most important thing was that she had refused to stay silent, refused to let another incident pass without challenge. Her phone rang through her car's Bluetooth. It was her assistant, Anthony. How did the meeting go? He asked eagerly. We got the contract, Jasmine replied, allowing herself to feel the full satisfaction of her professional win. Yes, Anthony celebrated on the other end of the line. I knew you'd nail it. Did everything else go smoothly this morning? Jasmine paused, deciding how much to share. Not exactly. I'll tell you about it when I get to the office. But the important thing is we got the client. As she continued driving, Jasmine noticed the quick stop sign in the distance. Without really thinking about it, she found herself changing lanes, preparing to turn back into the store's parking lot. She wasn't entirely sure why she was returning, to see if Ray was still there. To check if anything had actually changed? To reclaim the space that had made her feel so unwelcome just hours ago? Whatever the reason, Jasmine felt compelled to complete this morning's journey, to see it through to a different kind of conclusion. She turned into the parking lot and parked her car, taking a moment to gather her thoughts before stepping out. The store looked exactly the same from the outside. Same faded blue awning, same advertisements for beer and cigarettes in the windows, same flickering open sign. But Jasmine knew that sometimes the most significant changes weren't visible from the outside. She took a deep breath and opened her car door, ready to face whatever came next. This time she was entering the store not out of necessity, but by choice. And that made all the difference in the world. The bell above the door jingled as Jasmine stepped back into the quick stop. The familiar sound felt different now, no longer the innocent announcement of a customer's arrival, but a reminder of the morning's events. The store was quieter now, the morning rush having subsided. Behind the counter stood a young woman Jasmine hadn't seen before. Her name tag reading Lisa. Ray was nowhere to be seen, but Mrs. Johnson was still there, browsing through a small selection of greeting cards near the front of the store. She looked up at the sound of the bell and smiled warmly when she saw Jasmine. You came back, the older woman said, sounding pleased but not entirely surprised. Jasmine nodded, approaching her. I did. I'm not sure why exactly, but it felt important. I understand completely, Mrs. Johnson replied. Sometimes we need to reclaim spaces that have made us feel unwelcome. It's a way of saying, I belong here too. Jasmine was struck by the woman's insight. That was exactly what she was feeling, though she hadn't been able to articulate it so clearly. Is Ray still here? Jasmine asked, glancing around the store. He's in the back putting up a new sign for the restrooms, Mrs. Johnson explained with a small smile. Would you like me to get him? No need to bother him. I just wanted to... Jasmine trailed off, still not entirely sure of her purpose in returning. As if on cue, Ray emerged from the back hallway, a toolbox in one hand and what looked like a newly printed sign in the other. He noticed Jasmine immediately, his expression shifting from concentration to surprise and then to a welcoming smile. Ms. Walker, he greeted her, setting down his toolbox on the counter. I didn't expect to see you back so soon. Neither did I, Jasmine admitted. I was driving past after my meeting and just felt like I should stop in. Well, I'm glad you did, Ray said sincerely. How did your meeting go? It went well, Jasmine replied, finding it surprisingly easy to talk to this man who had been a stranger just hours ago. We secured the contract. Congratulations, Ray said, his smile widening. That's excellent news. There was an awkward pause, the kind that comes when two people have shared an intense experience, but don't yet have the foundation of a relationship to build upon. I got your text. Jasmine said finally. Thank you for following up so quickly. Ray nodded. Of course. I wanted you to know this wasn't just going to be swept under the rug. He gestured to the sign in his hand. I was just putting this up. He handed it to Jasmine so she could read it. Restrooms available to all customers. No exceptions. Quick Stop is committed to serving everyone with respect and dignity. What do you think? Ray asked, watching her face. Jasmine read the words again, feeling a complex mix of emotions. It was a small thing, just a sign with a simple message. But it represented something much larger. Acknowledgement, change, commitment. I think it's a good start, she said honestly, handing the sign back to him. Just a start, Ray agreed. Words are easy. The real work is in changing behaviors and attitudes. And that's much harder, Jasmine noted. It is, Ray acknowledged, but necessary. My father built this business on the principle that everyone deserves respect. Somewhere along the way, we lost sight of that. I'm determined to get it back. Lisa called from the counter. Mr. Martinez, the delivery driver, is here with the weekly order. I'll be right there, Ray replied. He turned back to Jasmine. Would you mind waiting a few minutes? I'd like to continue our conversation if you have time. Jasmine checked her watch. She had a conference call scheduled in an hour. But until then, her schedule was clear. I can stay for a bit. Great. Feel free to help yourself to coffee or anything else while you wait. On the house, of course. As Ray went to deal with the delivery, Jasmine found herself wandering through the small store, seeing it with new eyes. It was a typical convenience store, neither special nor particularly memorable, and yet it had now become a significant place in her life, the site of both discrimination and vindication. Mrs. Johnson approached her again, a greeting card in her hand. I'm buying this for my grandson, she explained, showing Jasmine a colorful card with congratulations on your graduation emblazoned across the front. He's finishing his master's degree next month. That's wonderful, Jasmine replied. What field is he in? Social work, Mrs. Johnson said proudly. He wants to help young people in our community. Says too many of them don't have anyone in their corner. That's admirable, Jasmine said sincerely. The world needs more people willing to stand up for others. Mrs. Johnson gave her a knowing look. Like you did today. Jasmine shook her head slightly. I just wanted to use the restroom. But you didn't walk away when you were treated unfairly, the older woman pointed out. You spoke up. That takes courage, especially when you're alone. Jasmine hadn't thought of her actions as particularly brave. She had simply responded to an injustice, drawn a line, refused to be dismissed. But looking at it through Mrs. Johnson's eyes, she could see how it might appear courageous. Well, I wasn't alone for long, Jasmine said. You spoke up too. Mrs. Johnson shrugged, a modest gesture that somehow conveyed both humility and determination. I've seen too much in my 72 years to stay silent when something's wrong. My husband, God rest his soul, always said silence is how injustice thrives. The two women continued talking as they made their way to the small coffee station in the corner of the store. Jasmine learned that Mrs. Johnson had lived in the neighborhood for over 50 years, had taught elementary school for 3 decades, and had known Ray since he was a child helping his father stock shelves after school. That boy has a good heart, Mrs. Johnson said, watching as Ray helped the delivery driver unload boxes. Just like his father. This community's lucky to have businesses run by people who care. Jasmine sipped her coffee, considering the older woman's words. It makes a difference, she agreed. Especially when things go wrong. That's when it matters most, Mrs. Johnson nodded. Anyone can be nice when everything's easy. It's how people respond to problems that shows their true character. After a few more minutes, Ray finished with the delivery and rejoined them, now carrying 3 small pastries on a plate. My mother's recipe, he explained, offering the plate to both women. She used to bake these every Sunday. The store doesn't do them justice, but they're not bad. Jasmine accepted one of the pastries, a small, flaky treat that looked like a cross between a cookie and a miniature pie. She took a bite and was surprised by the burst of cinnamon and honey that filled her mouth. This is delicious, she said, meaning it. Ray smiled, clearly pleased. Thank you. Food was how my mother showed love. She couldn't always say it, but she could bake it into something sweet. There was a vulnerability in his words, a glimpse of the person behind the business owner. Jasmine felt something shift in the conversation, from the professional handling of a customer service issue to something more personal, more human. Ray, she began, Can I ask you something? Of course. Why did you take this so seriously? Many business owners would have given a quick apology and moved on, maybe fired the employee for show, but not much else. Ray considered the question, taking his time to formulate an answer. 2 reasons, he said finally. First, it was the right thing to do. What happened to you was wrong, and addressing it properly was the only acceptable response. He paused, seeming to debate whether to continue. Mrs. Johnson gave him an encouraging nod. The second reason is more personal, Ray admitted. My wife Lucia is Afro-Latina. We've been married for 15 years, and I've seen how differently she's treated sometimes. The small indignities, the assumptions, the having to work twice as hard to get half as far. His voice grew quieter. I couldn't bear the thought of my store being a place where someone experienced that kind of treatment. Jasmine felt a lump form in her throat at his honesty. It was one thing to understand discrimination as a concept, quite another to witness it happening to someone you love. Thank you for sharing that, she said softly, and for taking action today. Ray nodded, his eyes reflecting a mixture of sadness and determination. I just wish I'd known sooner what was happening here. After my mother got sick last year, I had to step back from daily operations. By the time I returned fully, things had shifted. It's never too late to make changes, Mrs. Johnson reassured him. The important thing is that you're doing it now. The conversation flowed naturally from there, touching on the neighborhood's history, the challenges of running a small business, and eventually circling back to Jasmine's marketing firm. I was serious about potentially working with your company, Ray said. This store is just one of 3 that I own in the area. We've been thinking about updating our image, maybe expanding our offerings beyond the typical convenience store items. I'd be happy to discuss possibilities, Jasmine replied, her business mind automatically considering the potential of such a project. Local businesses often have unique opportunities for community-focused marketing that larger chains can't match. Exactly what I was thinking, Ray agreed enthusiastically. We've been here for 50 years. That means something in this neighborhood. As they continued talking, Jasmine felt her initial anger and hurt from the morning's incident gradually being replaced by something unexpected. A sense of possibility, of something constructive emerging from a negative experience. Lisa approached from the counter, looking slightly apologetic for interrupting. Mr. Martinez, Mrs. Patel is on the phone asking about changing her newspaper delivery schedule. Ray sighed good-naturedly. Duty calls, Ms. Walker, Jasmine, thank you for coming back, and for giving this store a second chance. Thank you for making it worth coming back to, Jasmine replied sincerely. As Ray went to take the call, Mrs. Johnson touched Jasmine's arm gently. You know, sometimes the worst moments can lead to the most unexpected blessings. I have a feeling good things will come from today's unpleasantness. Jasmine smiled at the older woman's wisdom. I think you might be right. She glanced at her watch and realized she needed to head back to her office for her conference call. As she prepared to leave, Ray returned briefly. I'll call you next week about those marketing ideas, he promised, and to update you on the changes we're implementing here. I look forward to it, Jasmine replied, finding that she meant it. As she walked toward the door, she noticed that Ray had already hung the new restroom sign in the hallway, its message clear and prominent for all to see. It was a small change, yet somehow deeply significant, a visible commitment to doing better. The bell jingled once more as Jasmine stepped out into the afternoon sunshine, feeling lighter than she had all day. What had started as an ugly incident of discrimination had transformed into something unexpected, a new professional connection, a reminder of the power of speaking up, and perhaps even the beginning of real change in one small corner of the world. As she drove away, Jasmine found herself thinking not about the humiliation she'd felt that morning, but about the possibilities that lay ahead. Sometimes life's most difficult moments contained hidden opportunities, doors that could only be opened by having the courage to confront injustice. Her phone buzzed with an email notification. Her new client had already sent over the contract for review. Jasmine smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment wash over her. Today had been challenging in ways she hadn't anticipated, but she had faced those challenges head-on and emerged stronger for it. The quick stop grew smaller in her rearview mirror, but its impact on her day, and perhaps on her life, would linger long after it disappeared from view. Some experiences changed you for better or worse. This one, Jasmine decided, would change her for the better, and maybe, just maybe, it would change a small corner of the world for the better too. 1 week later, Jasmine sat at her desk, reviewing the final edits on a marketing proposal for a new client. The morning sunlight streamed through her office window, catching on the small crystal paperweight that sat on the corner of her desk, a gift from her father when she'd opened her own firm 3 years ago. Her phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Ray. "Good morning. Any chance you're free for coffee today? I'd like to update you on the changes at Quick Stop and discuss some marketing ideas." Jasmine smiled slightly. She had been expecting his call, though perhaps not quite so soon. She checked her calendar. She had meetings in the morning, but a free hour at 2 p.m. "I can meet at 2. There's a cafe called Riverside about 2 blocks from your store. Good coffee and quiet enough to talk," she replied. Ray's response came quickly. "Perfect. See you then." As Jasmine returned to her work, her assistant Anthony knocked on her open door. "The team meeting is about to start," he reminded her. "And that new client called again. They're very excited about working with us." "Thanks, Anthony. I'll be right there." As she gathered her materials for the meeting, Jasmine found herself thinking about the events of the previous week. She had told Anthony and a few close friends about what had happened at the Quick Stop, receiving the expected outrage and support. But she had also shared the unexpected resolution, Ray's immediate response, his genuine apology, and his commitment to making changes. That almost never happens. Her friend Kelsey had commented when they met for dinner over the weekend. Usually it's just excuses or a half-hearted apology at best. "I know," Jasmine had agreed. It was refreshing. Now, as she walked into the conference room where her small team was gathered, Jasmine wondered what changes Ray had actually implemented in the week since their encounter. The team meeting went smoothly, with updates on current projects and discussions about potential new clients. Jasmine had built her firm carefully over the past 3 years, focusing on helping small to medium-sized local businesses develop authentic marketing strategies that reflected their values and connected with their communities. "Before we wrap up," Jasmine said as the meeting was coming to a close, "I wanted to mention a potential new client. Quick Stop convenience stores. They have 3 locations in the area. The owner is interested in rebranding and expanding their offerings." "Quick Stop?" Anthony repeated, giving Jasmine a knowing look. "Isn't that where—" "Yes," Jasmine confirmed, cutting him off gently. "The same place. But the owner is serious about making changes, and I think there's potential for a meaningful collaboration." After the meeting, the morning passed quickly with calls, emails, and a working lunch at her desk. Before she knew it, it was time to head to her meeting with Ray. Riverside Cafe was a small, locally owned coffee shop known for its ethically sourced beans and homemade pastries. The decor was simple but warm. Exposed brick walls, wooden tables, and large windows that let in natural light. Jasmine arrived a few minutes early and selected a table near the back, where they could talk privately. She had just ordered her usual, a medium latte with an extra shot of espresso, when she saw Ray enter the cafe, looking around until he spotted her. He was dressed more casually than he had been at the store, in jeans and a button-down shirt, though he still carried himself with the same quiet confidence. "Jasmine," he greeted her with a warm smile, extending his hand. "Thank you for meeting me." "Of course," she replied, shaking his hand firmly. "It's good to see you, Ray." After Ray ordered his coffee, a simple black coffee with room for cream, they settled into their seats across from each other. "So," Jasmine began, "you mentioned you wanted to update me on the changes at Quick Stop?" Ray nodded, his expression turning more serious. "Yes. I wanted you to know that what happened wasn't just a one-day response. We've made some real changes." He reached into his messenger bag and pulled out a folder, which he opened on the table between them. "First, Todd completed the unconscious bias training this week," Ray explained. "He's back at work now, but under supervision. I've had several conversations with him about what happened, and while I can't say for certain that his attitudes have completely changed, he seems genuinely remorseful and willing to learn." Jasmine nodded, appreciating Ray's honesty. People didn't change overnight. But accountability and education were important first steps. "Second," Ray continued, pulling out what looked like an employee handbook, I've updated our store policies to explicitly state that all customers must be treated with equal respect and dignity. Regardless of race, gender, religion, or any other factor, every employee has signed the new policy document. He slid the handbook across the table so Jasmine could see the new section, highlighted in yellow. Third, I've installed cameras in the store not just for security, but to monitor customer interactions. I've made it clear to the staff that I'll be reviewing footage regularly. That's quite comprehensive, Jasmine commented, genuinely impressed by the concrete steps he had taken. Ray shrugged slightly. It's what should have been done long ago. But there's more. He pulled out another document. I've reached out to a local community organization that focuses on racial justice. They've agreed to conduct quarterly training sessions for all my staff across all 3 stores. Jasmine raised her eyebrows, surprised at the extent of his commitment. That's unexpected. In a good way, I hope, Ray said, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Definitely, Jasmine assured him. Most business owners wouldn't go to such lengths. Ray's expression grew more somber. Most business owners haven't seen the hurt in someone's eyes the way I saw it in yours that day. He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. When you left the store that morning, Mrs. Johnson said something to me that I haven't been able to shake. What was that? Jasmine asked. She said, Ray, that young woman will remember how she was treated in your store for the rest of her life. Make sure your response is worth remembering, too. Jasmine felt a lump form in her throat at the older woman's insight. It was true. She would have remembered the humiliation of that moment regardless. But now the memory was more complex, layered with the unexpected response that followed. She's a wise woman, Jasmine said softly. She is, Ray agreed. She's been coming to the store since before I was born. Seen the neighborhood change, seen businesses come and go. She understands what it means to be a real part of a community. Their coffee arrived, creating a natural pause in the conversation. As they doctored their drinks to their liking, the tension of the moment eased. So, Ray said, his tone shifting to something more businesslike, that brings me to the other reason I wanted to meet with you. I've been thinking a lot about what it means to be a community business in today's world. Jasmine took a sip of her latte, listening attentively. Quick Stop has been in my family for 50 years, Ray continued. We've survived when many other small businesses haven't, partly because of location and partly because of loyalty from people like Mrs. Johnson. But the world is changing, and I think we need to change with it. What kind of changes are you envisioning? Jasmine asked, her marketing brain already engaging with the possibilities. Ray leaned forward, enthusiasm evident in his voice. I want to transform Quick Stop from just another convenience store into a true community hub. We have the space, especially at the original location. I'm thinking of adding a small cafe section, maybe hosting community events, offering products from local vendors. That's quite a shift, Jasmine noted. What made you start thinking in this direction? Ray was quiet for a moment, considering her question. Honestly, what happened with you was part of it. It made me realize that my father's vision for the store had gotten lost somewhere along the way. He didn't just want to sell cigarettes and lottery tickets. He wanted to create a place where everyone in the neighborhood felt welcome, where connections were made. Jasmine nodded, understanding. Community-centered business models are actually gaining a lot of traction right now. People are hungry for authentic local connections in an increasingly digital world. Exactly, Ray said, clearly pleased that she grasped his vision. And I think we have an opportunity here to not just rebrand our image, but to truly transform what we offer to the community. For the next 45 minutes, they discussed possibilities. Everything from store layout changes to social media strategies to community partnerships. Jasmine took notes as Ray shared his ideas, occasionally offering suggestions or asking clarifying questions. This is ambitious, she said finally, looking over her notes, but I think it has real potential. Would you be implementing these changes across all 3 locations? Eventually, Ray replied. But I'd want to start with the original store, the one where we met. It's the largest space and has the strongest community ties already. Jasmine nodded thoughtfully. That makes sense. Start with a pilot program, work out the kinks, then expand to the other locations. So, Ray said, a hint of uncertainty creeping into his voice for the first time. Would your firm be interested in helping with this transformation? I know it's a bit awkward given how we met, but actually, Jasmine interrupted gently. I think how we met gives us a unique perspective on this project. You've demonstrated a genuine commitment to creating an inclusive space. That's not just good ethics, it's good business in a diverse community. Relief washed over Ray's face. So you'll consider working with us? More than consider, Jasmine replied with a smile. I think this project aligns perfectly with what my firm does best. I'd be happy to prepare a formal proposal for you to review. That would be wonderful, Ray said, clearly pleased. Thank you. As they finished their coffee and prepared to part ways, Jasmine felt a sense of satisfaction that went beyond securing a potential new client. There was something poetic about transforming an experience of discrimination into a project focused on building community and inclusion. Oh, before I forget, Ray said, reaching into his bag one more time, Mrs. Johnson asked me to give you this. He handed Jasmine a small envelope. Inside was a handwritten note on pale blue stationery. Dear Jasmine, thank you for having the courage to speak up that day at the store. Sometimes it's the quiet moments of bravery that create the biggest ripples of change. I've been coming to that store for 50 years, and I've seen many things change in our neighborhood. Some for better, some for worse. But I believe the changes happening now because of you are definitely for the better. If you ever want to share a cup of tea and conversation with an old woman who's seen a thing or two, I'm at the store most mornings around 9. Warmly, Elaine Johnson. Jasmine read the note twice, touched by the unexpected connection. She carefully folded it and placed it back in the envelope. Please tell her thank you, she said to Ray, and that I might take her up on that cup of tea sometime. Ray smiled. She'd like that. She doesn't say it, but I think she gets lonely since her husband passed. The store is her social outlet most days. As they stood to leave, Jasmine found herself reflecting on the strange path that had led them here from a moment of hurt and anger to the beginning of what promised to be a meaningful, professional relationship, and perhaps even friendship. You know, she said as they walked out of the cafe together. When I stopped at your store that morning, I never imagined we'd end up here. Ray nodded, understanding the weight of her words. Life has a way of surprising us, sometimes in terrible ways, but occasionally in wonderful ones too. Well, Jasmine said, extending her hand once more. I'm looking forward to seeing where this particular surprise leads us. So am I, Ray replied, shaking her hand warmly. So am I. As they parted ways on the sidewalk outside the cafe, Jasmine felt a sense of closure combined with new beginnings. The incident at the quick stop would always be a part of her story, another entry in the long list of moments. When she had been judged by the color of her skin, rather than the content of her character. But unlike so many of those moments, this one had a different ending, one where accountability was taken, amends were made, and positive change was set in motion. As she walked back to her office, Jasmine thought about all the people who would enter the quick stop in the coming months and years, people who would never know about that Tuesday morning when a cashier denied a black woman access to the restroom. They wouldn't know about Mrs. Johnson speaking up, or Ray arriving, or the conversations that followed. But they would experience the results, a store where everyone was welcome, where community was valued, where policies and practices reflected a commitment to treating all people with dignity and respect. And maybe, just maybe, that was the most important change of all, not just addressing a single incident of discrimination, but creating systems and spaces where such incidents became less likely to happen in the first place. Jasmine smiled as she reached her office building, already mentally drafting the proposal she would prepare for Ray. There was something deeply satisfying about using her professional skills to help transform the very space where she had once been. Made to feel unwelcome, it wasn't perfect. Justice. Nothing could erase the hurt of that initial moment. But it was something meaningful, something tangible, something that pointed toward a better way forward. And sometimes, Jasmine reflected as she stepped into the elevator, that was enough to make a difference worth remembering.